Welcome to UPThinking Finance, a podcast that offers a unique and discerning view of economics and financial planning. Here are your hosts, Emerson Fersh and Amy Lenoble.
Welcome to another episode of UPThinking Finance. Michael Jordan once said, "Never say never, because limits, like fears, are often just an illusion." So I want to welcome everybody to episode 67 of UPThinking Finance, and I want to welcome and thank my partner, friend, and today's co-host, Amy Lenoble, for joining us. Thanks, Amy.
Thank you.
We did an interview with Charles Hugh Smith towards the end of last year. It was episode 64, and it was called Seeking a Culture of Honor and Integrity. And one of the things that we took out of that was we wanted to spend some time this year bringing on organizations that we feel a passion for, because we really feel that regardless of political issues and other things that are going on in the world, it really comes down to, one human being helping another. And so we're really pleased today to be able to invite two friends from Underground Ministries, an organization that our firm's been connected to for, I'm thinking somewhere between 10 and 15 years now. So it's my pleasure to welcome Chris Hoke and Corrina Lozano from Underground Ministries. Thank you both for joining us.
Great to be here.
Thank you. So, Chris, why don't we start with you and maybe give us kind of the elevator talk on the organization, how it started, and kind of where you are right at the moment, if you can do that.
Underground Ministries, this is our mission statement. Underground Ministries opens new relationships of embrace and trust between the incarcerated and the communities to which they return for our mutual transformation and resurrection. How I got here is, long story short, I was the child of missionaries and was a highly over-churched kid in Southern California. But I heard the Jesus stories probably so much like Don Quixote. I just that's all I could see. All I could see was wanting to live out the Jesus stories. Church was no longer a place to do that. It was just kind of a musical social fan club using the name of Jesus. But I wanted to go from village to village and heal the outcasts and raise the dead. I thought that's what we were going to do. So I found my way up the West Coast, eventually studying with a theologian in a tiny county jail here in Skagit Valley, Washington. We're an hour north of Seattle. And so I was working with undocumented migrant farm workers and folks in jail. And over years, it was the gang members that kind of called me their pastor. And I did not want to be a pastor, but I wanted to enter the world they were inviting me into. So I took on the role of being a gang pastor, walking with them in the community, the kind of Underground Ministries is our name, the kind of the underside of society that you don't see. They'd write letters to me from prison, and I learned reentry. We now call prison reentry, and what Underground Ministries does is the process of welcoming people out of incarceration back into the community. I did that just because I love these guys. When you have a loved one on the inside, just like people do for their kids, you do what it takes to get them into a certain college or to get them out of trouble. You figure it out. You don't need a degree. You figure it out if you love someone. So I was figuring out reentry for people coming home, and I saw how hard it was. That I saw why people stayed in the underground cycle after prison. It wasn't just a moral or cognitive change and a new resolution to do better. People are still buried alive under civic barriers, mountains of them when they get out of prison, unless there's a community at every layer to welcome people, love them, walk with them through legal, financial, housing, social ties. There's so many barriers that I didn't know until you walk with someone. So now after 20 years, Underground Ministries has two parts. Our local gang work is now run by Alex and Corrina and Hanato and many folks that have kind of come through our programs. They've now come through their reentry. They've gone to college, and they are reentry navigators working with gang affected folks, rebuilding their lives out of the underground, out of the tombs of prison. And our second program is called One Parish, One Prisoner, where we learned that there's roughly the same amount of churches in Washington State as folks in prison in Washington State. So we found out a way to kind of mobilize every church into relationship to do everything we do, but with one person coming in from prison. So we've launched about 75 teams around Washington State, and we're trying to see how we can expand that in new states.
That's so awesome. And I love, Emerson, how you referenced the Charles Hugh Smith podcast, because one of the things that came up from that discussion was about having no needs among us as a community. And one of the biggest needs that I've been thinking about has been transitional needs, whether it's children aging out of foster care transition or transition from domestic abuse into, a healthy, healing, or maybe an independent relationship. And obviously this transition, I also have a family member, a very young family member in prison, and we'll talk often. And that's a transition from being in prison for however many years, coming into a different world, of technology. Things are just progressing so much. My family member was listening. I don't even know how to apply for a job. I had never heard of online website applications and all these things. And so, thank you, Chris, for sharing. And it's my honor to introduce Corrina Lozano, who is a formerly incarcerated individual who are reintegrator assistant, that's right, with Underground Ministries. And so we just love to hear, more of your background and experience.
Hi, I'm Corrina. So some of my background is I've been in and out of incarceration since a juvenile. Been on my own since I was 14 years old. I moved across from Texas all the way to Washington, to meet my dad's side of the family, right? And because from being expelled from schools and going to juvie and doing all that, right? I really didn't have a support system, right? And all I knew was like, I'm gonna look up to my role models are my cousins, are my dad. They're, active, right? And so I thought that was right. I thought that's how you're supposed to live life, right? I didn't really have a positive role model in my life.
Active, you mean like not healthy active lifestyle, you mean active in gangs.
Active in gangs. Yeah. Yes. So, so that's okay. So for me, my upbringing was that's how a person is supposed to live their life. Right. Fast forward, I have my son when I'm 18, right? And I'm doing everything that I'm supposed to. I have my place, and then I just kind of fall off, right? And I end up in prison, and my son in the system. And I did a couple years, and I got out. And I really didn't have that support system, so I was trying to find it on my own, right? So this is 2015, and I'm out of prison. I'm trying to deal with CPS and getting my son back, and I really didn't, I thought I was doing everything I was supposed to do, and it just felt like barrier after barrier, right? You're not doing enough treatment. You're not doing enough this. So I self-sabotaged myself. I went back to my addiction. I was like, okay, my son, his grandparents are going to take him. Okay, fine. I'm just going to give up. I don't have a support system. I don't have anybody that, believes in me. Right. So I, ended up back in prison for, and for my addiction, for selling drugs, for using drugs, for making those choices. Right. I ended up another 5-year sentence. So when I was in prison, I was like, man, this isn't working for me. That lifestyle isn't working for me. I've already missed so much in my son's life. My son's going to be going to college. My son's in high school already now, right? So when I got out, I got out on graduated reentry. So it's an ankle monitor program where you get out up to 18 months early. And I released to an Oxford house. I happened to know one of the gals that lived in the house, and so she really advocated for me to get out into that Oxford house. So it was structure. I was like, okay, I've never lived in an Oxford house, so I'm going to try this. It's something different, and I know how to be sober now in prison. I don't know how to be sober outside of prison. How's that going to work for me? I need structure. So going into Oxford, I started to build my structure, right? And I had to make weekly schedules on GRE, and you can't leave your house if you don't schedule it a week in advance what you're going to do. I need to go to the grocery store. That's going to take me about an hour and a half grocery shopping, depending on the lines. I need to include another 30 minutes because to and from, right? I was like, how am I going to do this? Okay, I have the support of the house. And Alex reached out to me. He said, I heard you just got out of prison. How are you doing? And it just started I started building that support network. He's like, how are you doing? How can we help you? With your reentry. It started there when I got connected with Underground Ministries, and this is in December of 2021. And I had never had my driver's license. I didn't think I'd ever have one. to be honest. And I got my driver's license. Alex supported me through it, helped me study, helped me, get on my feet, right? And when I didn't pass it the first time, he was like, I was bummed, and he was like, no, no, you got this. You can do this. Read a little bit more. Give it about 2 weeks and we'll try again. So I kept reading, and, he just really encouraged me, and I didn't have that before, right? I didn't have like that support system. I mean, it's the little things, right? And really, really rebuilding relationships with my son, right? Connecting with him again, rebuilding that relationship, because I was in phone call contact with him and all that, but I really wanted him more in my life. When the underground healing group started, that was a big that was positive for me, right? So I was looking forward to them, being able to connect with individuals that were coming home from prison, like, had lived the same experience as me, right? And I started engaging and like being a part of, and like it helped me, like, because I have social anxiety. I get shy talking in front of people, right? And it really helped me start opening it up more. So I started participating, engaging, and like seeing that I wasn't alone, right? Building that support system of people in community that outside of underground too, right? I was introduced to like Skagit Legal Aid to get my legal financial obligations taken care of, right? And so that's like one of the barriers that I had was like legal financial obligations, child support, being able to get into like housing outside of Oxford, right? Because of my criminal background. And like I can't, like even now, I still can't go and apply and get into a housing that's not a private owner because of my background. I'm grateful and lucky that we found somebody that is renting to my wife and I now, right? So just having that support system and being able to engage, right? And I think for women in reentry, one of the biggest things is being able to open up and talk about it, right? And being comfortable in the space enough to do so, right? And I met Chris, and I was, he's easy to get along with, right? Easy to get along with, and easy, like very welcoming. I don't feel judged. And like I would for someone like, oh, look at her, she has tattoos, look at, she's mean, she looks like this, right? And I didn't get that vibe, right? I just felt welcome with open arms. And
It was the opposite. I was kind of intimidated around you. Like, you're so badass. Like, I really hope I'm cool enough to like that you'll smile and like be cool with me.
being able to open up, like I feel so welcome here, and I'm able to open up and just be myself and not feel judged, right? I was able to get hired on as a reentry navigator and give back what was like so freely given to me in my reentry and what I needed, because I didn't have that structure. I didn't have that support system, and I was able to build it by entering into the Underground Ministries and being able to connect with community. I didn't feel connected before. I didn't know how to. And now I have my son back in my life. My son I have a 2-bedroom house that I'm renting, and my son has a room right there. He's able to be with me. My son's in college. I'm able to do things that I wasn't before. I'm able to pay bills. You know, I still have a barrier though, right? I'm still working on my child support. That's still a barrier for my reentry and all that stuff, but it's something that I'm able to take care of now and able to make payments on, right? To keep my license, to keep moving forward. But there's still that stigma of being judged because of my appearance, right? Like, she looks like this, so she's like this, right? Or people like, oh, because of is it my verbiage, like how I speak? Like, some people may not understand how I'm saying, but I understand what I'm trying to get out. I don't know if that makes sense.
It does.
I feel like I've grown and learned a lot being in this program and being employed here at Underground Ministries. I'm able to advocate for other women and men, accompany to court, to make sure that their voices are heard, right? Like, speak for them till they can speak for themselves, or help them, so their voice is heard, right? and, let people see that, we're not just, another prison sentence, or we're not just another court case, right? We're people too. And, trying to get back into society and rebuild our lives, and Underground Ministries is really a big support in that.
Thank you, Corrina, for your candor and humility. You said a few things that I was typing down as you were talking. First of all, it's not obvious that you have social anxiety speaking, and you most certainly don't look like someone who has a son in high school. But we'll leave that. Congrats on your looks.
College.
Stop it. I'm sorry. College. You look great. You look great and you sound great. And one of the parts of your story that kind of hurt my heart a little bit was just like the power of how are you? Like just one person wrote and said, how are you? And that was like, so many people ask me how I am every day and I don't think about it. And, you are just getting out of prison, you don't feel supported. And then one person writes, how are you? And they have no idea the impact, just the power of the one question, and you feel seen and heard and supported. And so that's like inspiring me to reach out to people that I love more, But thank you for sharing that story. I did not know about the housing situation. So if you were previously in prison, or if a person, not you, excuse me, it's hard for that person to they can't live in like a regular apartment. They have to go through a private. Is that what you were saying?
So getting out into a transitional housing, right? I went to Oxford for 2 years before I was able to get into a house in Oak Harbor, but that was through a private renter. Like, I can't just go and put an application in to an apartment complex or this place because of my criminal background, right?
Wow.
I can't do that. Like, it's a big barrier.
I mean, that's a huge barrier. Where do people expect people to live? I mean, what do they normally do? They have to be with their family members or something? What do people do and I guess this is a rhetorical question, or maybe one for Chris, what do people do in that situation?
Well, yeah, we found over the years that if you deal with like an apartment complex that has any kind of like a renter's agency or any kind of a front desk, there's policies. And if there's a policy, that the policy is just as soon as someone has a fresh out of prison or they have a criminal record, they are taken out because they're not beholden to any regulation or sense of community. It's just a business. And when business is defined as make money, be risk averse, those business decisions times 1,000 in every community keep a lot of our people who are in need out of a thriving community. And so that's just one example of many businesses who just they're not thinking about what's good for the community. They're thinking about what's good for our bottom line, and I don't want to get fired.
That's so good. Not to reference this again, but like Emerson said, we were talking about with Charles Hugh Smith, like what is progress? What does it really look like? And most people define progress as money. Progress is I'm renting. We're going to use this apartment example. I'm renting to an affluent, group of people, but actually progress is like helping the community. Maybe it's helping someone, just the one person, change their whole life. And you never know what people can become. And hearing, your story, Corrina, I'm just listening to you and adding up all the barriers, we'll call them. I can't get an apartment. It's hard to get a job. I have legal and financial obligations. People look at me a type of way. People hear me a type of way. There's not much left that's very motivating for feeling confident and moving forward and, in this role. I mean, a person really has to be very secure and solid within themselves. And so that really says a lot about you as a person.
So I guess a question I would ask, I mean, what do you say to the person who is the landlord? I mean, let's talk about, I don't know if you can, but the people who are renting, what is it about them that's willing for them to take a risk or think beyond, just, the obvious easy choice?
Corrina, you share how you connect with that landlord, and then I say a little bit more about what we do in general.
Okay, so my wife made connection through church. And she was going to church, and she met Connie and Jeff, and they started helping her. Like, she was formerly incarcerated. We did prison together, all that stuff. Long story. In and out of prison together. And well, they started really helping her because she's not from Skagit. She's over in Oak Harbor, right? And they started really helping her with her reentry stuff. She got in a really bad car accident and almost lost her life. They were really there to support. And they're like, oh, well, we have a house that came open up. We want to help you. It was one of their houses. So they're like, we want to help you. So they came up with a rental agreement, like a lease. And we don't want a deposit from you. We don't want, we just want, your first month, and we'll start. You can move in 2 weeks before, but we'll just start your rent from September. Just so you guys can get settled and get into that place, right? So they really grew to love my wife and I, and learned who we were, not just because our backgrounds, and helped us and are still helping us. And super grateful for them.
Yeah, I think that story Corrina's sharing right now illustrates our whole purpose, and the main currency that we invest in is relationships. And when I shared our mission statement at the beginning, we feel that's the biggest resource that multiplies when you invest in relationship. I don't know. I'm just thinking with you all doing like finance and stuff. Like, there's an investment in relationship, and the ROI is just like logarithmic. Like, it just expands connections to other worlds, a sense of purpose and meaning. When people feel love, there's a positive feedback cycle. So with housing, oftentimes that can happen organically, and especially like with your wife, Corrina, a connection through church. That's why our program, One Parish is all about tapping into those departments, getting out of the Department of Corrections and creating departments of connections. And church faith community is a great place for that. But also, we used to just look up in the classifieds, just look for mom and pops renting, because they at least have the freedom to build a relationship. Whereas like big agencies are like, yeah, I don't know. I follow policy. I'll talk to my supervisor. But if there's a individual, you can drive over and be like, well, I'm working with this person. Would you be interested in hearing their story? And I'd come with someone I'm working with. And just the power of face-to-face hearing somebody's story, that's how it works. And that's what we do with employment as well.
Thank God. Yeah, I just never knew that. That's why I'm glad we're discussing this. There's so many things people don't know. And I think one big thing for me, I'm just going back to when Corrina, you had mentioned, I look a type of way. People hear me, they think I sound and look like someone who may have done whatever, insert X here, they make their assumptions. I think one thing that maybe irritates me the most is I think we've lost today that like two things or more, but let's say two things can exist at one time. Can someone have been a prisoner and committed a crime and also have been a great and wonderful person? Actually, yes. But that's unheard of. It's like, oh no, absolutely not. I mean, whoever did this is a terrible person. Whoever voted for this person is this kind of person. Whoever believes in this law, well, they're this kind of person. There's lots of putting boxes, and that's actually not true. I am a financial professional. I'm mature and confident, and I also can give into all kinds of insensitivities, get into conflicts with family and friends and strangers. I'm not above anything. But I think once someone has something on their record, it's like box, but actually you can be an intelligent, educated, wonderful human being who's ambitious and hardworking. And so that's just hard for me to hear. You're expanding my mind. And I kind of want to segue with that into, you had brought up the underground healing and being able to be around people who have been in similar situations. Would you mind explaining more what underground healing looked like, what that kind of ministry looked like?
Okay, so underground healing, it's our local reentry, right, in Skagit County. So we work with gang-affected men and women coming home from prison through building relationships, prison letters, phone calls, right? It's the whole wraparound services. So we walk with you. We don't just, oh, here's this resource, go here. We accompany you through the process, right? So that's part of the relationship building, right? And so and in reach, right? If somebody we're working with, ends up back incarcerated, right? We do is it called pastoral visits, Chris? Where we can go in and because I know I'm approved to go in and say go visit Chris in county, right? While he's going through the process again because he slipped up, but he reaches out and writes a letter from incarceration, right? From county, doing his check-in for groups, right? Because we have biweekly groups, and it's where we come together and we pick a topic. We talk about, healing, generational trauma. And we had a class that Chris and Alex and Hanato ran, and it was a 7 week class, and it's talking about where it started from, right? From our grandparents to our parents to us, and to our children, right? It's just we sit in group and we have a topic and open up. We do check-ins, like what's your comfort level, 1 to 10, 1 being the lowest, 10 being the highest, right? Name something positive for the week. Something good for you this week, and what's something that's got you down. And that really opens up the conversation, right? For somebody being heard, making you feel heard, right? And we have a 2-hour group that we run biweekly, so that's what we do, and just being a part of building that relationship in community, right? Making people feel welcome, right? That they're not alone.
So nice. Yeah, I was just so curious what it was like.
So I want to get back to, because you made a comment, Corrina, and I think this is, Corrina, it really is kind of the whole bridge towards getting people to get involved and take a risk and see, and that is going from a number to a human being. And I learned that with the homeless. There's a homeless person on the corner, and then when you ask them their name, now they're not just some homeless lady on the corner. That's Jan or that's whoever, and they have a story and they're a person, and it changes the whole deal. So, Chris, my question for you is: given that you've been at this for a while, I mean, are these barriers and stigmas changing? I mean, do you see any progress?
Yeah, I mean, next Monday will be 20 years to the day since I came up to this valley and began this work. So I spent this morning going through this exterior hard drive and looking through so many photos. And I was looking at the kind of classes and the groups we tried to have like 13 years ago. And it's a different climate now. I mean, I've definitely matured. Our staff has grown. Our programming has developed. But we've kind of been on this beat for a while. But now, yes, I very much agree. It's a different culture in the last few years. There's all of a sudden new state grants to do reentry. You say the word reentry, people know what you mean. They don't just think it's like missionaries or folks in the military are reentering, coming back stateside. That's normally what that word used to mean. So I think there's awareness of the problems of mass incarceration, the problems of what we call the criminal justice system. And I think tattoos aren't scary anymore. Like, millionaires like spend a lot of money getting tattoos. So I just think that the culture shifted in some ways on the surface, right? People are talking about it. People are less scared of like social media. Everyone's like trying to lift weights and look hard and cut like prisoners used to. And people are having tattoos. But where it hasn't changed is where, like what we were talking about a little bit ago, like on job applications or housing applications, there's like the soft culture, and then there's like hard culture and institutions and laws and financial risk. So those are the barriers that we're really up against too.
We've been fortunate, and this is just, I'm saying for context, to be financially involved with you guys, making contributions for a long time now. And one thing there's a point to this. We have a friend that's an advisor up in Toronto that wrote a book. He's Peter Cavelti. He's great. And he wrote a book about, intentional giving and about really dissecting out where your money's going. And we offered a book to all of our clients who wanted it. We had quite a few people respond because they want to make sure their money is actually being used. And he lays out a number of parameters that you guys totally hit the mark on, which is really keeping people informed of what you're, even the fact you're willing to spend time with us in a forum like this, right? But it matters. It makes a difference because, people can make a donation and then you get these videos with these stories, and you see the progress, you see the work. And I think I'm just basically letting from somebody on the outside who's not in the midst of the work you do every day as an outside person that supports the organization. Your communication is exceptional. So I just want to make sure you guys know that because it makes a difference. And maybe too, just to kind of pull that part of it in, because, obviously you're a nonprofit. How does, the contributions that you receive, I mean, can you just maybe say generally maybe it's as simple as it just keeps the doors open, but maybe dig into that a little bit for people that are listening that want to find a good organization that's doing exceptional work that matters, that's changing lives like you just shared with us and Alex just shared before. Maybe enlighten us a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, Corrina, you do a little bit less of the fundraising heavy lifting, so I might take a first swing at this question, but who knows? Corrina might be our finance and development director in a few years. I say that not joking too much because, Corrina, you came on, 2 years ago? Less than 2 years ago?
Mm-hmm.
And doing reentry navigation, which is a kind of just person-to-person social work, but she could take on so many complexities and was very effective at the social work and legal advocacy and lawyers and paperwork. And then we had to get more complicated software for reporting because both to your donors and to grants, you need to have numbers. And I was always just a storyteller. So we had to get all these chunky, data management kind of stuff. And Corrina was on it. So she built that skill set as well. And then when it comes to not just social work and reporting and back-end data, but convening groups, as Corrina was talking about, not a lot of organizations try to do all three, nor the same personnel. And Corrina has been just beautiful at convening groups and helping people feel safe. So all to say, Corrina, what I'm talking about right now, pay attention because you could see you doing it soon. Since I was raised with missionaries, one of the upsides to that was when I was wanting to do this work and no one would pay me. There's a kind of entrepreneurial spirit to missionary work. It's like, I'm going to go where I'm called. And then I'm going to be okay with being poor. And B, what I do need, I'm comfortable asking family and friends and standing up in front of strangers in basements and in living rooms and in churches saying, here's what I do. Does anyone want to give $20 a month? And so that's what I did for the first 10 years. That's okay for maybe one person's salary at the best. But it's hard to build an organization on that. So Underground has grown with back and forth. I don't know if I could borrow the phrase, like a diverse portfolio of individual donors. And some organizations only do that. They say, we don't mess with grants. And then you work with grant organizations that are really good at getting grants. And if they don't get a grant, they're done. And so they're like, oh, how do you invest in telling stories and newsletters and donor relations? But we've just kind of grown to include all three. Sorry, what's the third one? Church giving and denominational partnerships with us. And so individuals, religious institutions, government grants, foundations, some giving is $5 a month. Some relationships with folks of means are much more than that enough. So yeah, I don't know if we're good at all three, or if it's unwise to try to do all three, but that's where we're at. I don't know which one of those you want to maybe explore, but we're doing a little bit of all of it.
I think that, from our side of the desk, diversifying your revenue streams is a smart way to go. I mean, that just makes sense because if something shifts, especially when it comes to government, support programs, those things can change just because somebody, decides they want to do something else and that's in position to do that. So no, that's helpful. I think it's good for people to know. So thank you for sharing how you guys operate.
Well, I'd love to end with maybe a success story. If there's anyone, maybe Corrina that you've worked with who really sticks out, in your mind, just end on a positive note for all this work that you both are doing. I would love to hear that.
Yes, Liliana. She has been in and out of incarceration in the federal penitentiary. And I went and I advocated for her in one of her federal court hearings and was able to, get her sentence reduced and get her time served by advocating for her and the stuff that she was doing in the community prior to incarceration, right? And be that support, right? And now she's got a good job. She has she's working on getting her kids back in her life, right? She's got her own place and she's got a vehicle, right? So she's doing everything that she's supposed to do. She went from the similar background as me, right? To rebuilding her life and reaching out and asking for help and trying to be a part of, and she makes it to groups when she can, and just working on getting her daughter back living with her. She's already got one of her kids back home with her. And she's working on her next child, and she's made significant progress in just the things she's doing right now. And being able to be there and be a part of that, it's amazing.
That's awesome. Thank you for sharing. I just think of that that scripture that he works all things for good, and that was worked for good for you, and now you can do good for others. And I'm just so glad I got to meet you and hear more about your story and learn about all the work you guys are doing.
I know Lily, and Lily's journey includes something that is a big part of what we do, which is people make steps that they move backwards, they relapse, they go back to prison, and we really invest in relationships long term rather than going after numbers for like success on the immediate sense. And I guess maybe just because I'm talking with you guys, I keep thinking the metaphors of finance, but like if you got to have some tough skin to see financial dips in different like mutual funds, stock markets, right? And not just bail as soon as things look like they're going down. And I think that's our investment in relationships as well. When someone really dips and they fall down, we're not really tripping. It's like apocalypse for them, and they call us from jail, apologizing, fearing that we've cut them off. They're like, no, this is pretty normal. And so when we invest in people and in relationships in the long run, it's just a matter of time. We're going to win.
It's an honor to be able to have a conversation with you guys. It's more of an honor to have been involved. Mutual friend Dan. For anybody who's watching and is really looking for a place that's saving souls and saving lives, this is an organization that's doing that. And anybody who's interested in learning more, www.undergroundministries.org. Anyway, I want to just thank you for joining us and sharing your stories. Corrina, you're awesome. I'll tell you what, Amy already said it, but I'll reiterate it. You don't strike me as a person who's a shrinking violet or shy, and you're very well spoken. And I think that person that's in there is blossoming out, and you're finding that you've got a lot of talents. And I've always been a person. I'll just end with this: that every individual on this earth has a purpose. They all have gifts. They all have talents. And if an organization like this is allowing people to blossom and become what they're meant to be, then I don't know what else you could possibly want to do. So just appreciate meeting you for the first time. And Chris, it's great to see you again, brother.
That's so good. And I'll end with Chris's example that I love. When, we were talking about the dips and mutual funds, when actually the best time to get in is during the dip. That's the nice time to get in. You don't want to buy high. You want to buy low. And the point is, with relationships, it's the same thing as the fund. You want to get in at the dip because you never know how high that can go. You don't know what that person can become. That dip does not define that fund, and that dip does not define that person. And that's a fact.
I'm going to quote you for the financial wisdom of starting new friendships with folks who are in addiction and prison.
There you go. Do it. Do it. And just thank you. Thank you, Chris. Thank you, Corrina. And thank you, everyone listening. Please look them up. They're amazing. We just want to say thank you for joining us on UPThinking Finance.
Emerson Fersh and Amy Lenoble are registered representatives, and securities and advisory services are offered through LPL Financial, a registered investment advisor, member FINRA SIPC. The opinions voiced in this podcast are for general information only and are not intended to provide specific advice or recommendations for any individual. To determine which strategies or investments may be suitable for you, consult the appropriate qualified professional prior to making a decision. The guest speakers and the companies they represent are not affiliated with or endorsed by LPL Financial or Capital Investment Advisors, LLC. Individual tax and legal matters should be discussed with your tax or legal expert. Economic forecasts set forth may not develop as predicted, and there can be no guarantee that strategies promoted will be successful. All performance referenced is historical and is no guarantee of future results. All indices are unmanaged and may not be invested into directly. There is no assurance that the techniques and strategies discussed are suitable for all investors or will yield positive outcomes. The purchase of certain securities may be required to affect some of the strategies. Investing involves risk, including possible loss of principal.